starting to look really good here. We've got all the plug welds and the wheel well done, smoothed out. I got this seam all welded up and smoothed out. Still got to go ahead and weld this solid and smooth it out. And got one little plug weld there. We don't want to get that too welded up because we're going to have to replace this tailpiece. But one little problem I got is ran out of gas. So So after working on the motor for a little while, we're back on the body work on the Trans Am, and we've got this 5-foot long weld finally done. It takes a lot of patience. You just got to do little bitty tacks so you don't warp it too bad, and even then it warps a little. And I have one little spot here that kind of warped down, but it's not too bad. I think just a tiny bit of filler. And up in here, I think we're looking pretty good. So we have a solid quarter panel now. And finally, our rear tailpiece and the cross brace have come in. And I'm gonna go ahead and open these boxes up, and hopefully this wasn't one too damaged, because the box is all taped up. This one's AMD, so and the box looks good. So, but this one's kind of an off-brand. Took about a month to come in, but you know, when you get the cheapest one with free shipping, just gotta be patient, and hopefully it'll fit okay. But if it don't, we're gonna make it fit one way or the other. But we're gonna go ahead and get this thing opened up and see what it looks like. Alrighty, see what we got here. Box didn't do too good. It's pretty much going for it. Okay. Well, appear to be damaged. Seems to be all right. And yeah, I'd say probably about 18 gauge. Not too bad. The holes are oval shaped. I don't think they're quite that oval on the original, but I guess that gives you a little more room for fudge in it. So, let's see what our brace piece looks like. Wrapped up in plastic. Yeah, that's what we're going to need. So, kind of want to go ahead and start working on the tailpiece and see how all this is going to fit. So, take a look at that and see what we need to do. Okay, now this is what we're working at here. This is, of course, all rotted out, and it's kind of flaked up, but this quarter panel is somewhat intact. So that kind of gives you a guide to, you know, where this ends and where this comes together. And up in here, there is still a little bit of the flange left on that. So that'll give us kind of a guide. So I think I'm gonna leave this quarter intact while I'm removing this brace piece, which, well, there's not much left of it. There's some kind of mud in there. And so we're gonna have to break the spot welds from the frame rails and the fuel tank brackets. And I'm not sure if there's spot welds up there. There might be, but we can get all the way up into here, and the frame rail will leave us a guide for where to line up these slots. And I think I'm gonna cut it about right here and all the way across, and just remove all of this, leaving this quarter here. And of course I made a little piece behind there because it was non-existent. So I'm gonna go ahead and start whacking this off. And there's still a bunch of sandblast dust and dirt in here, so I'm gonna go ahead and clean all this out. I don't want all that junk falling on me when I'm working underneath. So we'll get this cleaned up and start hacking away at it. All right, I got this trunk cleaned out. A little dirt and dust, I don't want that falling on me. But I killed my little vacuum cleaner. It was shrieking and screaming, and then it died. So leaf blower worked really good, just blew all that junk out of there. So now we got that cleaned up, we can start concentrating on what needs to be done here. Now these spot welds here, I have to grind them out because that is part of the trunk pan. Now the trunk pan goes down here, so this is going to be where the flange is on the frame rail. So these spot welds, which I can't even see, it's so rusty, they're going to have to be ground out. But this area right here, I can just whack it out because that's this area right here on that frame rail. So I guess I got a lot of spot welds to grind out, and you know, from here on down there's nothing that needs to be saved except for right here in these areas. And of course here I'm gonna, you know, carefully disassemble it so that we leave this intact, so we know where this ends up and all of that good stuff. So I'm gonna go ahead and start grinding out these spot welds and cutting this out, peeling all this off, and see how much we can get done on this. Off of here. this lower brace piece, it pretty much disintegrated in this area, but try to get this piece off. I got all the spot welds ground out. Let's see if it's gonna come loose. Yeah, it's a bit of grinding with the little belt sander. Get that loose. And we got that off. So, a bunch of seam sealer and kind of a panel bond glue in there. That right there is the trunk pan. So, this right here, oh, this layer up here is the brace piece. Still good up here. Goes down around like that and then down under here. So we're gonna have to get the rest of this cut out and then we can get to this piece. Still another layer of plug welds, and then we can start pulling this piece down. Get this cleaned up. Pretty bad right there, and there's a ton of dirt up in this frame rail. Gotta get all that cleaned out. Do a little bit of repair in this area, and I think we'll be on our way to fixing this tailpiece. I've been wanting to do it for a while because it is really rotten. So yeah, keep on going on this. Okay, after a lot of chopping and grinding out spot welds, I've got the first layer off and still got this to go, the inner frame rail. And over here it was like disintegrated, because when you look at the new panel, it's quite a bit wider. There's something actually there. So had to do a lot of chunking out rust and digging out mouse nests and whatnot. And over here we got all 4 of our flanges with the 4 holes. But over here, looks like we're gonna have to do a little bit of a repair job. It's really rusty. We're gonna have to cut this out and replace it, because this right here just kind of disintegrated. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this inner frame rail off, do a little more chopping and spot weld grinding, and then we're gonna go over here and do a little repair on this before we can start going back with everything. So here we go with that. Okay, after more chopping and grinding and prying and twisting, and got the rear cross piece all removed and tried a little fitting on the new piece, and it seems like it's fitting pretty good. course, this was the AMD piece, so I'm not surprised. But looks like I had to drill out some spot welds up here because this went a little bit past my cut line. So I'll just plug weld those, fill them all up, smooth them down. And this needs to come up just a little bit over here, and I think put a few plug welds under here. And of course, we're gonna have to do a repair job back here. It's pretty nasty. So I think I'm gonna come in tomorrow and see if I can start doing my patchwork so that I can get this fit and start plug welding it in. Okay, I've been working on cleaning out a bunch of rust from these frame rails and brackets and stuff, and I've been making some patch pieces. I got this one to fit up in here, and I'm gonna go ahead and clamp that piece up to it so I can trace out that oval hole and drill that out. And also I got two of these pieces cut out to weld onto this little frame rail end where it was rotted away. And up in here I've got this piece that's gonna go ahead and fit up in here, set down in there. Like so. There. And what I'll do is I'll cut and butt around here, and then peel off the excess from underneath, and do a little patch job over in here and right here. And that was probably one of the most difficult patches to make because it's kind of curved and dished and all different weird shapes, but we'll get it hammered up against this, fix this area up in here, weld it all the way up solid, and we'll have that whole patch. Later on I'm gonna make a patch for this, and of course we've got the other patch to go over here. It wasn't real too bad, but I'd rather just put a whole new fresh piece in there. But before I weld on these little pieces here, I'm gonna take a little paintbrush and get all the way up in there with POR 15, because it's pretty thick still. It had some flakes of rust on it, but it's still solid, and I just want to make sure it stays that way. So we're going to put some POR 15 in there. I'll probably go ahead and do a little patch area over here because this is part of the trunk pan and it's a little rotted here. So we'll just make that look better and clean that up, put a new piece in there. And got all the spot welds all ground off of the fuel tank brackets and got those cleaned up. Surprisingly, they weren't too bad, you know. I guess this car was driven way up North Dakota where there's salt on the roads, and I guess the fuel tank brackets were protected by the fuel tank. I guess the fuel tank took the brunt of the salt on the road, so they're not too bad at all. On our Camaro, I had to really repair these, and of course the whole trunk pan was rotted out, so I went ahead and repaired them and cleaned them up, sandblasted them and welded them back on. But don't have to do that on this. They're in really nice shape. So we're gonna go ahead and get these pieces welded in here, get some POR 15 up in there. I'll probably put a little bit up in here too, you know, just spots where you can't get to. And then we can go ahead and put that cross frame rail on and drill out a bunch of plug welds for over here, for here, go on the back side and mark it and get it all welded on there really good. I'm gonna put some plug welds up in here And of course, fill in these ginormous holes. I had to drill out some big spot welds to get that old piece pulled out of there. But once we get all those patches done, get that in there, then we can go ahead and start working on putting in our tailpiece. So we're going to go ahead and do that all next. I've got my little bumper flange welded on there and a little oval hole drilled out and reamed out. And now I think I'm going to go ahead and start working on this little repair in here and go ahead and cut and butt it all the way around here and then peel off the old rotten stuff underneath, and I'll run a bead right here when I clamp it up against it and weld it up to this and fix this little rot spot right there. I think this side of the trunk will be really nice. I mean, it's still got the original factory paint on it, you know, the speckle type paint. And once we get that repaired, the only other spot is over here. So, you know, just kind of gradually getting all the little rot spots fixed. It's not really worth putting a whole trunk pan in here for a couple of little holes, so I'm going to go ahead and get this one right here fixed up. My favorite little flat discs came in, and so I was able to get down in this little cubby hole here and smooth out my welds. And I've got another little patch made for this hole out here. I'll go like so and go ahead and get that welded up. And of course, got this flange in there. Man, that looks a lot better than that. way better. So I'll go ahead and get this welded up. I'll start cleaning all this stuff up and get it ready to put on this rear brace piece. I've got these little repair pieces made here where that's gonna fill in all that rot spot right there. And I made an another one for the other side, and to where that'll go in there like so. And also, like I was showing you earlier, these little frame rails had little tabs on the end, and I'm gonna go ahead and weld those in there. But first, I'm gonna get up in there with the belt sander and get all the rest of that rod out of there, clean it up as best as I can. And I've got my Extendo-Matic paintbrush, so I can get all the way up in there like that. And on this POR 15, I've been wiping out the little groove, and that makes it so you can open the can again. If you leave that POR 15 in that groove, it ain't coming apart. You got to cut it open with a can opener or something. But it's been working pretty good. I've been using this can to do little spots here and there, and still working. But it's about 6 o'clock in the evening, and it's still 98 degrees and about 1,000% humidity, so I'm pretty beat down. I think I'm gonna come back tomorrow, which is a weekend, and see if we can get this tailpiece in there. I'm gonna have to drill a bunch of plug weld spots, and on these repair pieces I'm gonna have to make some plug weld spots for those, and weld up my little end pieces, get everything cleaned down as good as possible. Probably put a little POR 15 up in there and get it all prepped and fitted, and we'll get this plug welded onto the back. And boy, this little fire chicken will look a lot better. After that, I'm gonna move on to this other quarter skin and drop off and wheel well. But I've been waiting a long time for this tailpiece, and it finally came in, so I just kind of want to go ahead and get this rear section done. So tomorrow I'm gonna come back in and see if we can at least get that in, maybe even start working on that. We'll see. So see y'all tomorrow. All right, cleaned out up inside the frame rails and slathered PRO 15 up in there, and I got my little repair plates all prepped, and that'll go right there, and plug weld and run a bead over there, and got one for over here on this side, and got it all prepped and the holes plugged, and that one will go right there. And so now that that's all preserved up in there, of course I got up in there as far as I could. I'm gonna get some of the internal frame spray and run the little tube up in there and just slather it in until it drips out, kind of like I did there. Made a mess, but well, it's plenty of preserved up in there, lots of PRO 15. So I'm gonna get these little plates welded on, the other little tabs, then we can start working on fitting that rear frame rail. So here we go with that. First cut this piece off of here, I was looking at it, I said, man, this is all rotted out. But little by little, I got this little pocket filled in, little patch here, got all welded up solid, got these little plates here, little tabs here, this repair job over here, this tab, this little piece here. So I think we're ready to go for our rear frame rail. So gonna go ahead and start marking it from the back so we know where all our plug welds need to be for the little fuel tank brackets, and get those cleaned up a little bit more and get them prepped, and that way we can clamp that up there and start plug welding, and then get it cleaned up to where we can plug weld that piece onto that and that. So here we go with that. We got our rear frame rail all prepped up, holes drilled. I really Swiss cheesed the heck out of this thing, man. I mean, there's plug weld holes everywhere. So I think now, once we get this around here and slide it up into place, get it to cooperate. There we go. I think we're about ready to weld. So we've got a storm coming, and it's getting late today. So I think I'm gonna close up shop, come back in the morning, weld up that frame rail, because it's gonna pour. So we'll do this all tomorrow. Reduces the balance. All right. Okay. Get this to sand. C-clamp from Harbor Freight a long time ago. I hardly ever use it. I figure won't have to put a bunch of tack screws. We'll see how this is going to work. See if I can get this one plug weld right here. Alright. Well, kind of worked. Let's try another one over here. See if we can get this other side clamped up. Let's see if it's going to draw this up. This one's kind of bowed back. In the factory, they must have had to really clamp it down hard to spot weld that. See if we can get it mashed in there. Okay. So we can get this one plug welded. Okay. I think the other ones will just hammer down. So we can get one of these up here. Okay, let's try this one. All right, cool. I think we're gonna be able to get the rest of them now. Draw it up pretty good. All right. We're looking pretty solid here now. Real solid. So now we got something to put our rear panel on too. But now we gotta get all these plug welds knocked down so the other piece will fit over it flush. And I like to take the big grinder and get all these plug welds knocked down a little bit, and then come back in with the little one that gives you a little more control, so you're not, you know, burning through the metal, making it thin. But this works great for knocking them down. So here we go with that. We got a rear brace piece all plug welded up. Everything's looking solid, and looks like we're about ready to start welding on our tailpiece. Gotta go over here and cut this dude in half. I hate cutting it in half, but I'd much rather keep all of this original. It's all good and aligned and everything, with the quarters and the latches all in place. Everything's aligned. So we'll just go ahead and use the bottom half that was bad, and I think it'll turn out pretty good. Just get it welded up really good and smooth it out, and I think we'll be looking good. So here we go with the chopping. All right, let's see if we can get this panel fitted up. And trim it a little bit. lift these little bolt holes right here. So we can line it. Okay, now I think we can try to line the bottom as much as we can and make some marks, trim it off. I left these little bolt holes here so that I could line it up, and looks like I might have to hammer this out in the back. I've got a little bit of a gap there, but it's really good here. I'm gonna have to mark that and trim it just a little bit, and we're pretty good over here. Maybe a little bit of a gap to fill. Here we're slightly overlapped right there, so we're gonna mark that and then kind of, you know, sand it down just a little bit. Really good over here and really good there. A little bit of trimming there and I think we're good. It's like all these line up except for this one, and that's the original. The one that I made lines up fairly well, but they all line up. These are bigger holes, I guess, so that, you know, if there's a little bit off, you still got an oval there. So got this little strip along here where they'll pinch together, and we'll use the spot welder down there, all along there. Hold that in good. And I marked the little holes in the back. I'm going to drill those out. I'll probably do a few plug welds here and a few plug welds here, and then probably 4 one around each one of these, and hold it good. Of course, I'm going to leave this alone until I get my quarter on there, and then I'll work on that. But this over here, I think we can weld that up solid, and that'll be really stout. So it's looking good. It's a little tiny bit of trimming, then we'll do our prepping, get some etching primer on the inside of this, on the outside of that. Of course, up underneath in the back, we've got access. I'm gonna spray the whole bottom of the car with POR 15, so it's looking good. We're gonna go ahead and start getting this fit a little bit better and prepped and start welding it. Got everything fitting really good. Got all of the etching primer and weld through primer on the tailpiece. Got this all prepped, and I think I'm gonna let all this dry, come in tomorrow afternoon after work and go ahead and start plug welding and welding up that seam. I think we'll be looking good. It's so much more stout before, man. You could just take a hold of it and just wiggle it back and forth. It was so rotten. So can let this all dry up and do a little welding tomorrow. All right, it's the next day and I got a little time after work to do a little welding on this. Got everything clamped up and ready to weld. We're gonna see how much we can get done on this. Had to go ahead and put some etching primer on my bare metal because it was starting to get a little bit of flash rust. So cleaned it up a little bit and put some etching primer on there. And I got to remember to put some etching primer here after I'm done welding so it don't get flash rust. But we're going to go ahead and start doing the plug welds and start doing this seam. Get a few little tacks on there and stitch it all up. So we'll see how far we get. Got all my plug welds here done. These little plug weld area here. All this all smoothed out. And I got a bunch of the seam welded up here. And when I get to here, I'm gonna chop that off and run my bead there. Same there. And I think when I come in tomorrow, probably have enough time to finish this up because that's all I got there. And I gotta break out the spot welder and clamp this down and spot weld that, and I think we'll about be done with this rear tailpiece. So we're gonna come back tomorrow and see if we can't finish this up. We've got everything welded up. Got our seam welded all the way across, all the plug welds, ground down and smoothed out. Over here I just ran a bead down, makes that solid to the new quarter panel, and took the little spot welder and spot welded this flange along the bottom. Got that all spot welded up good. And these little Harbor Freight spot welders, they don't work too good on 110, but on 220 they work pretty good. It spot welded that seam all together, and it's held good, and all the spot welds held. So that's gonna about do it for this video. Next time around, I think I'll push this body out and roll it out on the dolly, turn it around, and start working on this other quarter and drop off an inner wheel well, because it needs it bad. It's pretty rotted out. So appreciate y'all watching, and I hope you enjoy our content, and we'll see you all in the next one.